Tonight, the CBC investigation continues. Former students of a Saskatoon Christian school allege a Sunday school teacher sexually abused them. Also, a man has been arrested and charged with first-degree murder in the death of Megan Gallagher. Plus, a longtime Saskatchewan crime reporter has walked away from her day job and turned to creating fictional crime stories instead.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Tuesday, September 20th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. 3 women are alleging they were sexually abused by a Sunday school teacher at a private Christian school and church in Saskatoon. This follows a CBC investigation into Christian Centre Academy. As Yasmin Ghanea reports, the women are pointing to one teacher in particular and an alleged cover-up. A warning, this story contains distressing details.
Caitlin Erickson says the memories are still clear in her mind. She attended Christian Centre Academy in Saskatoon and the attached church for 13 years until 2005. And when she was a young girl, she says she was sexually abused by a Sunday school teacher there.
And you would have been how old?
6 or 7.
The teacher was Nathan Schultz. His parents were senior officials with the church. Erickson says when Schultz was 16 or 17, he took her to the equipment room in the school and made her touch his penis by telling her he had something for her in his pocket. Erickson says the incident has traumatized her for years.
The effects are something that a lot of us are going to be dealing with for the rest of our lives. And I've had, therapy to address this kind of thing, but this shouldn't have happened to begin with.
CBC News spoke to 2 other women who say Schultz sexually abused them too around the same time. They were between 4 and 7 years old. They say Schultz got them to take candy off his genitals with their hands. One says she also had to do that with her mouth. Some of these allegations are outlined in a $25 million proposed class action lawsuit, which claims sexual abuse was perpetrated and covered up by multiple people. School and church officials appear to have known of abuse allegations at least 3 times. Erickson says she had to apologize to Schultz's parents in a meeting with a top school official after she brought up allegations in 2003. And parents of one of the other victims say they told a senior church official about alleged abuse after a few years when their daughter told them. They say the official told them to keep quiet.
There was definitely a culture of secrecy. It was, a bit of a hierarchy where children were at the very bottom and we didn't have the ability to speak out at all.
CBC News also obtained an email dated last year from a church elder who says he heard a few years ago that Schultz got girls to take candy from his penis. Neither Schultz, his parents, nor other officials responded to CBC's request for comment. A statement of defense hasn't been filed yet. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Yasmin Ghanea, CBC News, Saskatoon.
There's a new arrest and a murder charge in the case of a missing Saskatoon woman. Megan Gallagher was last seen on this day 2 years ago.
When we heard the news this morning that an arrest had been made, the words couldn't describe my emotions anyways.
Gallagher's family took part in a news conference at the Saskatoon police station this afternoon. Police say they arrested 27-year-old Bobby James Thomas today in Prince George, British Columbia. He's charged with first-degree murder. He's also the 5th person arrested in this case. The other 4 are charged with indignity to human remains, even though Gallagher's body has yet to be found. Police say they'll soon begin a search in an area of the South Saskatchewan River. The Crown called its last witness today in the Dylan Whitehawk trial. The 27-year-old is charged with the first-degree murder of Keisha Bitternose in 2020. As Jesse Anton reports, prosecutors called several former gang members to testify this week.
Keisha Bitternose's killing was premeditated but didn't go as planned. That's according to one Crown witness who testified this week at the Dylan Whitehawk trial. The 28-year-old has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. 3 of the Crown's witnesses this week were all former Indian Mafia members who were in the mix the night Bitternose died. All of their identities are protected by publication bans. The first witness testified she was supposed to help Whitehawk and another gang member kill Bitternose. She claims she was told to take Bitternose for a walk so they could shoot her in a drive-by. That didn't happen, though. Police found her body in the back porch of this Cameron Street home in January 2020. Autopsy results show she had too many injuries to determine her exact cause of death. The second former gang member backed up that witness's evidence. He said he went with her to retrieve the gun from the crime scene as per Whitehawk's alleged wishes. He said Whitehawk described Bitternose's killing and asked him to keep quiet and to get rid of her body. The Crown's final witness said she saw Bitternose being shot and stabbed. She told the court Whitehawk and another Indian Mafia member had tried to get her to kill Bitternose to help promote her in the gang and to get revenge on Bitternose for starting rumors about her, but she couldn't do it. So instead, she says the one gang member shot Bitternose, who then crawled up the stairs only to be stabbed by Whitehawk. All 3 witnesses were cross-examined about why they chose to speak up about these things now and not in prior testimony or police statements. The defense pointed to their heavy use of drugs and alcohol around that time as well. One witness had previously said she blacked out that night, but now she says the memories are coming back to her. This trial is scheduled to run until Friday. Jessie Anton, CBC News, Regina.
The Transportation Safety Board is investigating a plane crash near Shaunavon that killed 2 people. The Cessna 172 left the Swift Current Airport Sunday morning to do a pipeline inspection flight. It was headed for Estevan but never made it. The plane went down around 11 kilometers southwest of Shaunavon. There was a fire after the crash. 2 people aboard the plane were fatally injured. The TSB investigators were on scene today. Saskatchewan has crossed another significant milestone in the pandemic. More than 1,500 people have died due to COVID-19. That's according to the latest epidemiology report from September 10th. Saskatchewan has also recorded more COVID deaths this year than it did in 2021. The province has reported 552 COVID-19 deaths this year as of September 10th. That is 88 more deaths than were reported during the same period of 2021. One expert says the figures show that COVID-19 continues to pose a threat and that the province should provide more data to the public.
All we were told is, manage your risk, do your own individual risk assessment and then, take steps accordingly. But how can we do that, when we actually don't have any information, any data?
Margarine says that due to vaccines, Saskatchewan's in a different place than it was 2 years ago, but he says caution is still required. He's calling on the province to provide action to deal with COVID-19 going forward. Some doctors are criticizing a recent change to the Saskatchewan Health Authority's 811 line. It used to include an option for the Medical Assistance in Dying program, but that option was removed at the government's request.
Press 5 if you wish to leave a message with the Medical Assistance in Dying program.
That's the old menu option, and that video was tweeted last month by the leader of the People's Party of Canada. Maxime Bernier called 811 a, quote, death cult. The Minister of Rural and Remote Health confirms his office subsequently directed the Health Authority to remove that option from the phone service. He says it did not make sense to greet people with a message that could potentially imply suicide is an option. A family physician from North Battleford says nothing is further from the truth. He's worried about what he calls political interference.
I think it's a trend that is worrying in our province of our government ignoring experts, in this case, healthcare experts, for healthcare decisions. The Supreme Court of Canada has confirmed that medical aid in dying is legal. It's, I think, without argument, a healthcare procedure, whether you agree with it or not. And having the minister directly interfere on one specific aspect of healthcare provision is definitely worrying.
Dr. Bouchard says medically assisted death is a standardized procedure. It requires 2 assessments and 2 healthcare providers. He said it's not an option for suicidal patients. The push toward nuclear energy continues in our province. Today, Sask Power announced that it has narrowed down the possible location of a nuclear reactor to 2 communities. Adam Hunter has the details.
If Sask Power decides to go ahead with nuclear power, it would build small modular reactors at one of 2 possible locations in the province. The first candidate is Estevan, including the areas around Boundary and Rafferty dams.
The Estevan area has been a very important part of Sask Power's history. Through the Boundary Dam and Chan power stations producing stable, reliable baseload power for decades, to the hundreds of employees that call Estevan home, and by identifying the Estevan study region, the opportunity to continue this history is exciting.
The other possible location is around Elbow, near Lake Diefenbaker.
Sask Power has evaluated nuclear power for a long time. And throughout all of these studies, Lake Diefenbaker has always been at the top of the list as one of the most technically suitable locations, potentially to host a nuclear facility.
The 2 areas had to meet the following criteria. They had to be close to water, have existing power transmission, and the ability to support a workforce. Sask Power says it must also engage with local leadership and the public. The final decision on a potential location is expected next year, but Sask Power says it won't decide on whether to use nuclear power until 2029. If it goes ahead, a reactor would be operational by 2035. This will come at a time when coal power has to be phased out. Saskatchewan relies on coal for a quarter of its power generation. The minister responsible says the lights and furnace will stay on.
We are going to make a commitment to the people of this province. We will supply reliable baseload power no matter what we have to do.
The opposition says it will be watching to make sure the government and Sask Power are open and transparent.
This is a huge project, as we've talked about, as well as potentially a huge economic boom for communities. And there's significant public consultation that needs to be done. And as this moves forward, wanting to make sure that we're picking the best sites for this project and any projects in Saskatchewan, and not just picking winners and losers.
Sask Power has estimated the cost for one reactor to be $5 billion. It will choose only one of the 2 sites and could build 2 SMRs there. Adam Hunter, CBC News, Regina.
It was a gloomy, windy day in downtown Regina. We did get a few glimpses of the sun, but this is pretty much how things looked all day. We are certainly shifting into autumn-like weather as the first official day of fall approaches. Ethan will have more on the forecast after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. You likely recognize the name Heather Polishuk from her newspaper byline. For more than 2 decades, Polishuk was a court reporter in our province, first for the Prince Albert Daily Herald and then for the Regina Leader Post. Earlier this year, she walked away from that job, but as Bonnie Allen tells us, she's making a name for herself under a different name.
Spending her day writing about a murder case is nothing new for Heather Polishuk. But now, the former journalist turned novelist is making the stories up.
I enjoy it for the fun aspect and just I love making up worlds. I love creating characters. I love putting them out into a book and seeing what they're going to do.
For more than 20 years, Polishuk worked as a court reporter for the Regina Leader Post. This was basically her office, where she covered the full spectrum of the human experience, the best and the worst of humanity. All too often, the cases were disturbing.
Like if I had to cover a child abuse case, I knew I was going to be absolutely angry for 2 weeks after. Like I just knew, because that was just my habit. I would cover child abuse, be angry for 2 weeks. If I was covering a really horrific murder trial, I knew I was going to be really unable to sleep. I would have, close my eyes and I would see those autopsy photos in my brain. I knew that was going to happen to me, so I could kind of go in prepared, but you're never really prepared at the same time.
She would often cope by channeling her energies into creative writing in her spare time, something she's loved doing since she was a child. In 2018, she self-published her first crime fiction novel under the pen name H.P. Bain.
The feelings attached to those crimes, those were very real for me. And sometimes could be hard to get my head around and to get my heart around, frankly. And so I would turn those often, just kind of take those feelings, take those thoughts, and give them to a character.
Polishchuk grew up on a farm across from a cemetery, and she's always been fascinated by ghost stories. So her first series follows a private investigator who sees the ghosts of homicide victims.
And I thought, hey, that would be fun. I'll throw some ghosts into my crime fiction and just see what happens.
Just as Polishchuk's love of fiction writing was growing stronger, her desire to work as a journalist was dimming, in part due to staff cuts, heavier demands, and what she found to be a more hostile environment.
I felt like basically as a crime reporter, I was used to dealing with threats and, nasty comments, nasty emails, people in my face, occasionally even feeling a little physically threatened by somebody. You just deal with that. It rolls off your back in court a little bit. But it felt like that was happening more and more outside of court. And so that was starting to kind of weigh on me as well.
Having published 17 books already, she decided in May that it was time to quit her journalism job and focus on her writing career, something her readers will appreciate.
I think the best group of readers in the world, they're so supportive and just wonderful people. And, I just, they really, they keep me going in more ways than one. So yeah, as long as they're reading, I'm happy to keep writing.
Her paranormal crime stories, thankfully, born of her imagination. Bonnie Allen, CBC News.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac, making back to busy easy.
And weather specialist Ethan Williams joins me now. I'm going to ask it. Who ordered the wind?
Not me. Certainly not. But yeah, if you had loose clothing, loose hair, forget it. It's gone. That wind blowing it away this afternoon, and it's still windy even right now. Gusts were close to 60 in Regina a couple of hours ago, but really east central and southeastern Saskatchewan bearing the brunt. The winds will die down tonight, but another thing we're going to have to keep in mind is frost in the western half of south and central Saskatchewan, all the way from Meadow Lake down to the Cypress Hills, over to places like Moose Jaw, Saskatoon, Prince Albert. Bring the plants inside. You know the drill by this point. We're also looking at fog in that similar region as well, southwestern, west central Saskatchewan, up through the north of the province. Some patches building in overnight and through the early morning hours tomorrow morning. A little bit of showers on our radar as well as part of that lingering low pressure system moving between Saskatoon and Prince Albert. That is starting to diminish at this point, but we could still see more showers along the eastern border of the province as that cold front continues to move through. And as it does, we will welcome in high pressure, which is why we could be seeing some frost in western sections of the province tonight. Now, as we get to tomorrow, that high pressure pays off because we are going to be seeing some sunshine. Temperatures will be about where they were today, but still a nice, clear, calm day across the province. Our next troublemaker is a low-pressure system in the States, and that's going to be bringing some rain to the southern portions of the province as we head through Thursday. Now, for tonight and into tomorrow morning, we are looking at some heavier rain, especially in the Pelican Narrows area, maybe down toward Cumberland House as well, 10 to 15 millimeters there. South End, you could pick up 7 to 10 millimeters in there too. Now, for central Saskatchewan, Hudson Bay likely going to be picking up the most, 3 to 5 millimeters. That's a little less than we were looking at earlier today, which is good. Winds going to be a little bit gusty along that side of the province as we head through the overnight hours, close to 40 kilometers an hour. Still picking up in that southeast corner as we head through tomorrow afternoon, but high pressure really going to take place as we head into tomorrow evening, and wind gusts will diminish significantly. Then that next system moves in on Thursday, and especially along the south of the province, gusts get close to 50 kilometers an hour once again. Now, in terms of our temperatures, we are under the influence of this trough in the upper atmosphere, but another ridge moving its way. Of course, not as strong as the last couple of ridges we saw earlier in the month where temperatures got close to 30 degrees, but still quite nice conditions. And we will see that start to build in with that high pressure at the surface And it will stay that way for the next few days, as you'll see here in our forecast for Regina. Again, a cooler, clearer, calmer day tomorrow. First day of fall is marked by some gusty winds with a little bit of cloud cover building in. That system moving in late Thursday into Friday. And then temperatures getting right back to seasonal with some sunshine as we head to the beginning of next week. Saskatoon, very similar conditions tomorrow. We're looking at 16 degrees under sunny skies. First day of fall, close to 20 degrees for you folks. Cloudy conditions on Friday. You won't be as impacted by that system as Regina and southern Saskatchewan will be. And then temperatures not too bad at all. So after seeing 30-degree temperatures, Sam, earlier in the month and some rainy, cooler days near 10, call in the Three Bears because we got a Goldilocks forecast here. This is looking nice.
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Oh. Speaking of bears, you never know what you'll see in the wee hours of the night. This mama bear and her cub were spotted outside a home in Calgary's Discovery Ridge community. Around 2 a.m., the pair decided to swing by and check out the front yard, but take note of their path. They were kind enough to keep off the grass. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Consumer inflation in Canada eased again in August. Statistics Canada reports it fell to 7%, down from 7.6% in July. The decline was led by a drop in the price of gasoline, which dipped nearly 10%. However, that was offset by grocery prices, which shot up almost 11%, the biggest jump in more than 40 years. So consumers are unlikely to notice the overall decline in inflation. Core inflation was also down in August, dropping to 5.5% from 6% in July. Core inflation does not include volatile items like food and fuel, and it's the measure the Bank of Canada uses when making interest rate decisions. Members of Parliament are back in the House of Commons for the start of the autumn session. Today marked the first question period with Pierre Poilievre as leader of the opposition.
The average family could pay their housing bill with 32% of their paycheck every month. Now, that's 50% after 7 years of this Prime Minister in power. What's his solution? To raise taxes on paychecks with higher EI and CPP premiums that will shrink paychecks and higher taxes on gas, groceries, and heat. Why won't they cancel these tax hikes so that Canadians can keep a roof over their heads?
Poilievre did not get to go head-to-head with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who is at the United Nations General Assembly. His questions were handled by other members of the cabinet. The Liberals focused on measures they introduced earlier today that are supposed to help families. If passed, the legislation will temporarily double the GST rebate, provide one-time $500 checks to low-income renters, and provide $650 to help cover dental costs for children. And Ethan is back with one last look at tonight's weather.
And after an evening of some potentially showery conditions, we'll wake up to sunny skies in Regina, 7 degrees, northwest winds around 30 kilometers an hour. Those will start to die down as we head into the afternoon hours. They'll still be a bit gusty at the noon hour. It will be around 13. That's almost at our daytime high in Regina. Saskatoon, sunshine for you as well. You won't miss out. Maybe some patchy fog around 8 a.m. as well, but quite cool. Only 4 degrees. Those winds quite a bit less significant, and 13 degrees, nearly our daytime high by the time we hit the noon hour. Mentioned the bears a little bit earlier, but what about the foxes? Got to give them some attention as well. And this red fox captured by CJ up at Prince Albert National Park. Talk about leaping into fall, Sam.
Just need some bunnies and some squirrels, and the gang's all here.
It's all there.
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/sask or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Glenn Reed will be back with more local news tonight at 11. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.